Hello teachers, welcome to this 7th virtual session. Today we're going to be talking about ECRIF, again with our virtual trainer, Wesley Koo. Hello Wesley.
Hello Daniel, thank you for inviting me again to these virtual sessions. I really appreciate that invitation, thank you.
Thank you for sharing with us. Teachers, remember that in the Teaching Help platform you can find more courses, lesson plans, community share, formats, material, and information about teaching English. Today we're going to be talking about ECRIF, and we have Wesley Koo again. He was a TAC course participant. He received the SIT certification, the ITOT certification last year, and he is studying M. His working experience goes from being a teacher in a private school, access teacher, SEAL, assistant teacher, head teacher, and a teacher trainer in the TTS program in this year. So thank you, Wesley, for being with us, sharing about this important topic, and I hope we can learn a lot from your experience and your knowledge.
Thank you. Yeah, sure. So let's start with the first things. Let's talk about the goals that we have for the session today. The first goal that we want to achieve here is to identify the meaning of ECRIF. And as we will be learning, we'll be discovering what's the meaning of this acronym through the workshop. Also, we want you to learn about the framework ECRIF and its processes. We'll be learning how these affect the students and how benefit is this for the teacher and also the class that it is applied. Other of the goals that we want today is identify the use of the framework in a context. In a real context, we'll be talking about some context that we have experience in, and also some different examples that I have here in the presentation. And also the exemplify a real use of a framework. The real use of the framework, it's really hard to get. So having these examples, we'll be learning more about the use of it. Now, here's a question that I want to ask to all of you before we start with this workshop, little virtual session. Do you think learning has a concrete process? So Daniel, tell us, what do you think about this question?
Well, I think that learning happens in a very abstract way, so I would say there is not a concrete process to follow.
Well, there is something interesting about that pretty much the learning, it's a huge process that takes different ways, and it depends on also in what you want to achieve, that it takes some kind of process at the end. So yes, pretty much it has a process that it follows. It's just the way that we see it and also the way that we put it on papers. So we'll be learning about this, and you'll find this interesting to see in the process of all this session. So let's see. I have here on the screen what is ECRIF and what ECRIF stands for. Here we have all the letters, the 5 letters that ECRIF integrates. So let's start with the first one, which is the letter E. What do you think, Daniel, is the letter E?
I think E stands for execution.
Mm-hmm. Well, here we have something interesting, something kind of similar, which says encounter. We start with the first letter, which is encounter, and as we know, encounter, it's facing something new about knowledge or about an action or about something different that we are not used to.
So it would be the first time that I see something. That would be.
That's right. That's right. That would be your encounter part. And that pretty much is the first letter, because that's what we normally do and how we normally get this new knowledge from the different actions that we do every day or different situations that we face during the day, right?
Yeah, that's right.
The next letter, it's the letter C, and it is really interesting to see that the next step for this framework, it's the clarify. What do you think we do in the clarify stage, Daniel?
Well, if in the first stage we encounter in the first stage we have questions. We have many questions. Right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
The clarify stage, we solve those questions that we have.
Yeah, that's right. As the name of it says, it clarifies different questions that we have about this new situation or this new action that we are facing for the first time. So that makes us move to the next step, which is the remember stage. Now, the remember stage, it's the stage in which we as people and as person that, yeah, as humans that we want to learn something, we try to remember the things and the process that it takes to have an action. As we know, to make a cup of coffee, we need to follow a process. Yeah. And we need to remember what is the correct process for this creation, this cup of coffee. We need to follow the water, then we move to the coffee. Then if we like sugar, we put some sugar, right? But we need to remember all these steps. And in this part, this moment, that's the moment in which we start doing the remember stage. We remember all the process that takes us to do an action.
Okay, so once we had questions in the encounter, we clarify the questions, the doubts that we have, then we remember about this thing that we just learned, the new knowledge or the new
That's
skill.
right. Yeah, that's right. We want to remember all the process that we went through to get to this goal, to this action in it. So then that make us the last two steps are really important steps, which is the internalize, and the last one, which is the fluent use. And in the fluent use and also internalize, we want to practice. That's the main objective that we want from these two last steps. We want to practice. We want to practice what we learn from the encounter to the remember and how to use it in the real context. We're talking about the cup of coffee, and the first step for all of this will be watching someone drinking a cup of coffee. And after this, we have some questions like, oh, is coffee good? Does it have a good taste? Does it make me feel with energy, or is it sweet? What's the sour? What's the flavor? What's everything about the coffee? And how much do I need to drink? How much do I like? And all these questions in our heads at the beginning, or really beginning, once we encounter for the first time someone like drinking coffee. Then we move to the clarifier, right? In which we start having these questions about, okay, can I just take the coffee like that without water? And once someone explained to us how to do it, and what's the process that we need to follow in order to create a cup of coffee, we move to the next step, in which is the remember stage. We need to remember all the steps that other person explained to us to create a cup of coffee. Then in the internalize, we move to remember these steps and make this with the supervision of someone. So in internalize, we want and we make the cup of coffee, but with the supervision of someone. And that someone knows how to do it. And it's guiding us, just like saying, no, maybe this is not the step that you need to do. You skip one step, or things like that guides you in order to create a cup of coffee. Then in the last one, it's just us with the coffee. And it's like the final test for us to see if we learn how to do a cup of coffee.
Okay, so in the internalize and fluently use parts, we practice.
That's right, that's right.
The difference is that in the internalize part, we have a like supervision, and in the fluently use, we are free to practice.
Yeah, that's right. In pretty much the last step, it's just for the student or to the person to develop everything he or she learned through the complete process.
By him or herself.
Yes.
Okay.
So that pretty much it's what ECRIF stands for, and that makes us go to the next step. Like, we are focusing this into the educational field. And here I have a chart in which you can observe how these work in a classroom, what the students should be doing through all the steps, and what they may be thinking about all they are going through. So as it says there, every single stage takes some time in order for us to understand how it works, and also in order for the students to understand how to learn. In the first stage, which says encounter, what the students are doing, the students see or hear new language and realize they don't know something. Pretty much what the students need to realize in this stage is to see that there is something new, that there is something that they might want to learn during all this process that we will take them. Now, this stage is the most relevant for them in order to get engaged with the topic. Why? Because in this stage, they need to start having questions about the topic. And as it says there, what they may be thinking, what is this? I don't know this. These questions help the teacher to engage the students on how they can get this new knowledge in order for them to practice it. Now, to the next stage, we, as we said before, we clarify some questions that they might have about the topic. Students distinguish the meaning and use of the new knowledge or skill. They ask questions and think about what is correct. They go through all these questions and they want to have answers. And we, as teachers, we need to facilitate the answers. We don't give the answers. We just show them what can happen if they do certain actions to get this knowledge. As we were saying before with the example of the cup of coffee, if we put, I don't know, soda instead of water, it might have a different flavor with the coffee, right? If we put water, we might have a cup of coffee. And all these experiments, we'll call them, help the students to learn what can happen if they do something, and what can happen if they follow some paths. That's pretty much the way the clarify is. That the stage is one of the basements for them to have a concrete base in order for them to start building up all their knowledge. But we need to give them the resources to have this clear in all the process, right? That's why it's the second stage of all this framework. And as it says there, what they may be thinking, oh, I see what it means, or I see how to do this. What's the difference between this and that? Is this right? They might want to experiment with all this knowledge, and we need to create this time with them for them to experiment with it, and also to have an experiential moment with all this knowledge that they are just facing for the first time. So what do you think about this, Daniel? Do you think that the encounter and clarify are really like the base of what we want at the end? Like what do you think about this process?
Yeah, I think that when we are in the encounter part, we have to try to look for these expressions in our students, not to make them think, or to think, what is this? I don't know this. And when we're in the clarify one, we have to try to make that moment in them, like that's right. That's what it means, because that's how we learn. When we, for the first time, learn something, no? Like, for example, when we want to learn how to ride a bicycle, we just see people how they ride their own bicycles, and we try, and the moment we can do something or we have an advance, we go like, this is how. So I think that's a very natural process.
Yeah, pretty much. And as you were saying, right, we have this process following the natural process of learning in all the people, in all the humans being. Indeed, we can see and observe that this is a normal process that everybody has every single moment, every single situation that you face for the first time. We do this automatically. We don't even think about it. We just follow the flow, knowing this. And now that we are seeing how this works, you will start thinking, I'm pretty sure you will start thinking that this, oh, I'm going through the encounter stage, I'm going through the clarify stage, I'm clarifying my doubts about this and that, right?
Yeah.
So following this, the next step will be to remember. As you see in the chart, the remember and internalize stage are together because both works in order for the student in this case have a moment for practice and remembering all the process that they just learned before. With the questions that they clarify, they need to be able to remember all this in a moment in which they can practice. It says there, students have a chance to move the knowledge or skill from short terms to long terms memory. They can begin to personalize it and use it in different contexts. They connect it mentally to prior experiences with images, sounds, and feelings. They start connecting all this new knowledge with the knowledge that they have. We can take the example of the bicycle that you were saying, Daniel. In order for us to know how to do this, we need to have a process of failure also. We need to learn that if we ride a bicycle, we might be able to fall down. And if we don't stabilize the bicycle, we probably go to the right or to the left. Or what are the movements that we need to do in order for us to cross? Or how much we need to pedal to get speed or to lower speed. It depends also on what experiences the student in this case has already. All this knowledge, they connect it, and at the end, they start having this process of remembering all the steps that they need to follow in order to have a success action or a success activity at the end. Now, what they might be thinking, as it says there in the chart, okay, I'm starting to remember in this, okay, I've got this in this activity, I'm making connections to my own life, and they start figuring out how this works, how all these processes start working inside of their heads. They start putting them in action. They start executing it in the real context. And that makes us goes to the last step, which is the fluent use. In the fluent use, as we were saying before, we want them to experience all the complete knowledge, everything they learn, they need to practice it. In this case, we're making a student ride a bicycle. They need to experience how to do it. And after they learn and they watch, they observe, they have some failures, in this moment, that's the final test, how they will do it and if it will work. And based on that, they can start all over again, the complete framework, right? So, as it says there, what the students are doing, students have a chance to use the new language to communicate their ideas. Students work towards being able to spontaneously use the language in different contexts. And what they might be thinking in this stage is, oh, cool, I can use this skill or knowledge automatically. This is for real world purposes. I don't have to consciously think about this. And they automatically start doing it by themselves without the supervision of someone. They start practicing by their own. That's pretty much the complete process that we follow for whatever thing we want to learn, right? So, Daniel, what do you think about this? What do you think about the complete process of the framework that guides the students to learn something?
Yeah, as we said, I think it's a very natural process that we all follow when we are learning new things, and we maybe don't realize we are going through it, but we are going through it. Now that you say, when we remember, it's like we use different techniques to remember things. For example, I need to have images to remember, or to relate a person's name with a fruit or something like that for me to remember. So that's my personal remember stage. And in my internalized stage is when I connect this knowledge, this new knowledge, with previous knowledge that I have in my own experiences in life. And well, fluently use is when I use this knowledge without automatically, without going to my remember stage.
Yeah, that's pretty much the process that we all follow, right? And we need to be consciously aware of this, that our students needs to pass to with every single stage that appears here, for them to realize that they are learning something. And then little by little they will start knowing, oh, I learned this the last lesson, in the last lesson with the teacher. Oh, we did this 2 weeks ago. And they start connecting all this knowledge together, and they see the purpose is for them to use it in real life contexts.
Yeah.
So this framework helps us a lot in that aspect. We want to use this framework to have a path to follow and to have a really clear way to make the students learn in a really natural way.
Mm-hmm.
So this makes us goes to the next 3 questions, which are: when do we use this framework? Why should we use this framework? And what benefits we can find using this framework? I'm pretty sure these 3 questions are really relevant for all the teachers. One, because we all are teachers that want to know how we can use this in our real context. We have different contexts, different classes, different students, and these are the questions that normally comes to our heads, like, when do we use this framework then? I mean, I can see that it is really good to make the students follow a path, but when do I need to use this? And why should I use this framework? So first, I will ask you the first question there, Daniel, for you to tell me what do you think about it? When do you think we use this framework?
When do we use this framework? I think that we should use it when we want to learn something that we ignore, or to reinforce the knowledge of something.
Yeah. Pretty much we use this framework, as you say, to reinforce some knowledge, but also we want to use it to teach something specifically during the classes, right? Which is vocabulary and grammar. We want to reinforce some vocabulary, or to make them face something new about the vocabulary or grammar lessons. Now, why should we use this framework? It's a simple reason that I can give you. It's that we use this framework to have a clear path as teachers to follow with the students. And also this makes us follow a SMART objective that we were talking last time in a different in the last virtual session, right? That the SMART objectives are really important for us to follow and to achieve different things. Yeah. And what benefits this can have? Here I put 3 bullet points that I believe are really relevant, which are concrete process to follow, achievable goals, and also that this framework is flexible. It is flexible to be adapted in the different situations that all the teachers can be in whatever moment. Now, this guide us to how to use this. How can we use this framework in our context, pretty much? And first is that the ECRIF is a way of looking at how people learn. And rather than perceiving what teachers should or should not do, it guides us to see it from the perspective of the student, and to make it in a way that they feel not frustrated, that they cannot learn something, or that they are not feeling able to achieve the final objective, right? So this pretty much guide us to use this framework in a vocabulary lesson, or a grammar lesson, or a speaking lesson. Pretty much we want them to practice it. And these 3 are the main topics that we can teach with this framework, because it can adapt pretty well to the different ways of learning that the students have. And then also, as I said before, it is really flexible with all the contexts. It makes us have this flexibility with all the different topics that we can have in vocabulary or in grammar or whenever we want them to speak, right? So here I have some examples that I want to share with you. The first is a little story, a little anecdote that you can observe the use of the framework in a real life context. And I will read it to you, and I want you to pay attention to the different stages that this person went through. Okay? So imagine you go to a party and meet some new people. In this context, when you see a face and realize that you don't know the name and you want to know the name, you are encountering the person and have a need for information. Likewise, you may hear someone calling out a name, but not knowing which face it goes with, and your curiosity is piqued. In these cases, your attention is focused. You have a desire to learn, and the context makes the name meaningful. Once you hear it or see the face, in the next moment, you seek to clarify the name by either asking the person a question, looking at name tags, or noticing who turned their head when their name was called. You may also seek to clarify the spelling and pronunciation of the name. Next, you may work to remember the name, moving it from short terms to long terms memory. For example, you might repeat it several times, using it in conversations, make it rhymes, or associate it with another person you know who has the same name. As you spend more time with the person, you may internalize the name by building up a set of experiences by hearing, seeing, and feeling things that you associated with the name. These experiences over time makes it possible for you to fluently use that person's name, meaning that you have become automatically with it. You see the face and instantly think of the name. So, as you see, this is a normal context, a normal situation that we face. Maybe not in a party, but some friends that we are hanging out with, we see a new face, and we might want to know what's his or her name. And that's pretty much all the process that we need to follow, right? This is a really clear example of how the ECRIF framework works in the real context. And I believe you, Daniel, you have been through an experience like this before, I believe. I have been in that kind of situations too, in which I found myself trying to remember the name of someone.
Yeah.
trying to remember, associated with different things in order for me to remember the name. I mean, I'm really bad at remembering names with new people. I don't know if that happens to you, but it happens often to me.
Yeah, it happens a lot when I'm teaching and I don't remember the name of the student. I am like trying to make associations to remember.
Yeah, that's something normal that we have in the classes, right?
Yeah.
So here is the other example that I have for you, talking more about the plan behind a lesson. Here it's a document that you pretty much will have. You might want to download after watching this video, in which it shows how the ECRIF is planned for a lesson. In this case, we have the topic of introducing myself. And the objective, it's the one that appears there on the screen. We have here the first part, which is the warm-up, in which I pretty much look for the students to have kinesthetic activities and to start realizing that we are getting into the mood of learning, right? Mm-hmm. And you can check these more details in the document that you will have, right? Daniel, they will have this document.
Yeah, you can find this document in the course. You can download it. Right now, you're going to see stage by stage, but during the document, you will find the whole lesson plan.
Yeah, so there you can go by details in every stage, right? So then we have the encounter part, in which we want the students to see for the first time this topic. and to realize that he or she doesn't really know something about it. And that's interesting because we all know how to greet people, right? But we don't know how to introduce ourselves in different ways. We might just know one way. And that's pretty much what I wanted to achieve in this stage, for them to realize that there are different ways to do it and different words that they can use to introduce themselves, pretty much. Questions, more likely. In the clarify stage, we have the questions and an activity that makes them go through a process in which they can clarify all their questions and how to pronounce some things, how to use some questions, when to use them, and how appropriate are them for every situation. Then we have the remember stage, in which we pretty much practice all what we went through before with all the class, using different techniques. In this case, we're using the technique of TPS, which is think, pair, and share, for them to remember different parts of all the lesson. In the internalize stage, we want them to practice with all the knowledge that they just got from us, and they are using a substitution drill in which they need to put in paper everything they learn. And also they start little by little practicing with a classmate or a group of students. And then we go to the last stage in which they need to practice it in a context in which they feel able to share their knowledge and to introduce themselves, pretty much, and ask some questions about other people. That pretty much will be all the examples that I have for you today. And I just have some little advice and experience that I want to share with you. Pretty much, I have these bullet points here for you to take in consideration once you start using this framework, which in the first bullet point, you will see experience versus theory. That for teachers, it's good to know the theory about how this works. It's good for us to know that it needs an objective, that it follows a process, that it makes the students learn in a natural way. But the experience that you get every single lesson you are using this framework, it's the things that you need to connect with the theory that you know. It's not just about if the book says that the students will learn in this way, they will. No, it not will always be that way. You need to experience different things, and you will see that some students might not learn in this way, or some students might not really feel engaged with this, or that some students will feel that this is too much for them, and you will need to adapt it in order for them to learn. That's why experience versus theory, that's something that we need to balance. We need to know the theory, but also we need to have the experience to connect it and to know when to do the activities and how to do it also. Then we have also that every single moment is for learning. And this is by my own experience. I have learned a lot from my students. They, in different moments, they ask questions, and that makes me think that they are doing the ECRIF just in a little scale every single moment. Every single moment they are learning, every single moment they have new questions, and I need to find ways to clarify those questions by giving examples or making them go through an experience or making them really have an example in real life, or different things like this that help them to clarify these questions. Now, the third bullet point, and I believe this is the most important one, at least for me, is that every single time you deliver a lesson, you need to observe your students, and you need to observe their reactions in order for you, for the next time, to see, oh, this helped them to remember this, or this kind of activity clarify their questions, or this kind of questions help them to understand the topic. And these kind of things that happen inside of the classroom helps you as teachers to make a better plan, a better lesson plan for the next time. That's why observation is a really, really important factor that you need to take in consideration every single time you're teaching. That doesn't really matter if it is just for this framework or using another framework. And the last bullet point, which is analyze, you need to analyze the reactions of your students and the reactions that happen whenever you do something. What happened when you go in front of the students and you start giving examples? Do they pay attention? Are they writing? Are they just listening? What happened with them? And that goes really, really connected with the observe bullet point, right? So you need to be really aware of all what is happening inside of your classroom in order for you, for the next lesson plan, to have a better and improve everything that you believe you can improve during the class. So pretty much those are my recommendations. And the last one I almost forgot that I have that bullet point there, which is be patient. Be patient with everything you do. Every single activity that you want to try, don't expect to work in the moment. Don't expect to work at the really first time that you are trying it. Be patient whenever you want to do something new. You need to try it many times. You need to fail many times. And that's pretty much how this also the ECRIF framework goes, right? You need to fail many times to find out that there is one way that you can do it, and then how you can improve that way. So be patient with this framework. This framework might not be like really succeed at the beginning, at the first time that you are trying it, but with time, you will figuring out how to make it work for your context and for your own classroom. So
yeah, I think that when we were first learning how to use this framework and everything, it was super difficult for us to come up with activities to make students go through that. So a very easy thing to do is to try to make students react with those questions that we had in the examples here. To make students go through these reactions, right? Like if they encounter, students will react like, what is this? I don't know this. To clarify, they should go like, this is it.
That's right. That's right.
Remember it. Internalize, they should practice with personal experiences, and fluent use, they should be free to practice. So trying to look for activities that suit this, and as you said, being patient. I think that we are learning also as teachers. So we are going through a practice stage and we have to learn. We have to fail sometimes, and if we fail, we have to have action plans for the next time to implement something new, right? So
that's right.
A recommendation too, that we have to be conscious that we as teachers are learning how to teach too.
Yeah, that's completely right. And I completely agree with that. We as teachers, we learn every moment, and we need to be willing also to learn new things, right? To try out new things and to be brave enough to see, okay, I will fail, but I will learn from it. And that attitude is the one that guides teachers to create new and beautiful things with students.
Yeah, you're right.
So at the really end of this presentation, I have this little quote that Daniel, if you can help me reading it, please.
The real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. Marcel Proust. So
as you see, we sometimes need to change our eyes because the landscapes are around, but if we change of eyes, we change the perspective of seeing it, we will start discovering new things, and things that might have been there for long time ago, but just because we have the same eyes, we don't see it, the same perspective. So that's something that we need to be constantly changing our perspective of seeing the reactions and how this works and why this works this way, right?
Yeah, that's very related to what we are talking about today.
Yeah, so that pretty much will be the little session, right?
Yeah, thank you for sharing about ECRIF. I think it's a very big topic to talk about in one video, but it was a good presentation. Many things can be talked about it, but I think we will have more opportunities to share about this more in the future. By now, thank you a lot for sharing from your experience and your knowledge. And I hope you teachers learn something new, and we encourage you to try out and to practice this new framework in a new lesson plan and see how it goes.
Yeah, sure. So thank you. Thank you a lot for inviting me for this session. Really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll see you again in another session that you invite.
Hopefully we can see you again here, Wesley. Thank you for participating, and thank you teachers for watching this video. See you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.